Speaking of efficiencies and doing more with less, Mr. Gilmer, with LineVision, very excited to have you here today and hear your vision.
Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be here. So my name is Hudson Gilmer, CEO of LineVision, and what I'd like to talk about today is the important role of grid-enhancing technologies in relieving grid bottlenecks. So we heard from Ms. Miller in the earlier panel about the fact that bottlenecks to California's grid represent probably the biggest obstacle to achieving the clean energy goals of the state, but also to really capturing a fair or even outsized share of the benefits, the jobs, and the funding that come from the Inflation Reduction Act. If we think about California, it's always been a leader in clean energy and has perhaps the boldest clean energy and net zero goal of all states in the country. And so on the surface, it would seem that California would be exceptionally well positioned to benefit from the funding opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act. But the challenge is, if we dig in a little deeper and look at how we get to net zero, really the grid constraints represent a bottleneck to those funding opportunities, because after all, this is really private capital that's looking to go wherever these projects can be built. And if we think about the steps of net zero, decarbonizing generation, so this is tax credits in the IRA that are funding renewable wind and solar projects, but they can only go where there is grid capacity to build. Secondly, if we look to the right, this is electrifying transportation, electrifying buildings, electrifying industrial loads. Again, huge role, exciting role for the funding opportunity in the IRA, but that brings additional loads that come onto the grid. So really what's often overlooked is that third step in the middle, which is expanding grid capacity. Experts say that between now and 2035, we'll need to double grid capacity in the state of California and nationwide, and we'll need to triple it by 2050. And California, if we look at where it's positioned right now, already is experiencing massive grid bottlenecks. I'll give you a couple of examples. So right now, grid congestion is at record levels in the state, and just in 2022 there was $647 million at retail rates of curtailments due to grid bottlenecks. So this is basically wasted wind and solar generation. And a second example is that California unfortunately stands dead last among all states in terms of the percentage of wind and solar projects that make it through that interconnection process and actually get completed. So this is missed opportunities for jobs. It's missed opportunities for funding, particularly with the advent of the IRA. So it would seem like there's a simple solution. Why don't we just build more grid capacity? But of course, we know the challenges that come with that. The permitting challenges, the time it takes to go from project design to completion, and these are typically 5-year processes or more. So really where LineVision comes in is that we represent a new model for how we build grid capacity, how we build grid infrastructure, not with poles and wires, but using technology, using advanced sensors and analytics. And this, if I go into a little bit of detail, what LineVision does is use non-contact sensors that mount on the tower and provide real-time data on the conductors, and help utilities take advantage of the fact that even a little bit of wind cooling the line allows them to safely put up to 40% more power through those existing lines. So we've done projects across the country and around the world. 6 of the largest utilities in the U.S. are clients of ours. This is a proven technology. Actually, some of you may have seen there's a project here with SMUD, not more than 5 miles away from us, that was featured in a recent NPR release just a week or so ago. So the advantage of this grid enhancing technology or dynamic line ratings approach is that it is significantly cheaper and significantly faster than the traditional approaches to building grid capacity. We estimate it can be done at less than 5% of the unit cost of building new transmission, and perhaps even more importantly, it can be done in a matter of 2 or 3 months as opposed to the 5 or more years that it takes to build new transmission. But I want to be clear, this is not a silver bullet. In order to double or even triple grid capacity, we'll need a range of solutions, including grid enhancing technologies, including reconductoring existing lines, including building a record amount of new lines. But these are complementary to each other. And I won't go into detail, but there's a recent study that was done by the Brattle Group that showed some of the benefits of combining grid enhancing technologies with these other more traditional solutions. 40% or more reduction in congestion before and during construction of these new projects. And the way to think about this is really that grid enhancing technologies represent the low-hanging fruit that allows us to get a jump start and really buy ourselves time while those more traditional approaches of building new infrastructure get underway. So, maybe moving to solutions, there's really kind of 2 categories. The first is reforming and incorporating grid enhancing technologies into both the grid planning, transmission planning, and the interconnection processes. So there's a concept called the preferred loading order that was really pioneered on the generation side that I think is applicable here to say, yes, we will need a range of solutions to support and speed up the interconnection process, to think about how we scale grid capacity, but let's start by getting the most out of the existing wires. And then, the other set of recommendations, and my colleague Hillary Pearson, who heads our regulatory group, is available for the reception afterwards, and we can go into much more detail. But this is really to take advantage of the funding opportunities at both the state and the federal level. One of the things we've seen in the state of New York is how catalytic funding from NYSERDA was in really seeding some of those initial projects, and it's no coincidence that that's where the most projects that we have of any state are. And we see a similar role for California in terms of the EPIC program and the CEC. And then at the federal level, I know we've talked a lot about the IRA, but the IIJA has about $14 billion in infrastructure funding, much of which is for grid technologies to improve both resilience and capacity of the grid. And you can really say this is kind of a multiplier where capturing those IIJA dollars is positioning the state to better capture IRA dollars. And there's even perhaps a second order multiplier of saying that once those renewable projects come online because we have the grid capacity, that can also reduce energy prices because you've simply got more supply on the grid. So in closing, I'm here today because I'm so impressed with the role that California has had in leading on climate, in leading on clean energy, and I think this is really another opportunity for California to lean in on grid-enhancing technologies as a way of overcoming those grid obstacles and really maximizing the opportunity with funding and jobs from the IRA. Thank you.
Thank you so much.